when you're in your 50s and 60s and up, you start getting that feeling that I'm getting older. But there are some things that come along with getting older that are actually a benefit. We do know a lot more things than people think we know. And it's just because we've experienced a lot of life and we've been interacting with different people in our lives, and we've come to know that we do have some knowledge to pass on. So if you hold out with me in this video, you're going to see 7 things that older people know, and if you hold out to the very last, you'll have a bit of wisdom, whatever, especially if you're younger, that you can hang on to for the rest of your life, that will help actually make your life a little better. So stick with me for these 7 things that older people know. This first one may seem a little dark, but it is realistic. Older people know that you could die at any moment, that life is short. Now, you knew this when you were younger, but you have a whole different sense of it as you get older, because the longer you live, the more you do get to see other people pass on that you know, whether it's family, friends, celebrities, people you know, you've seen on TV, whatever. So you do get a realistic sense that this life is very short. Now, that being said, there is the advantage that you know there isn't time to waste, is there? And you know that there's not time to waste on silly, stupid things. So what you're trying to do is you kind of start assessing your everyday. Before, when you were younger, you were thinking, maybe in your 30s or mid-20s, you're thinking, what am I going to do for a career? What am I going to do for the next 30 years, 40 years, considering your health is fine? And that's what we thought about. But as we get older, we do realize that it's not so much about the 20 or the 30 or 40 year stretch. It's more about the 24-hour stretch, the 30 stretch, maybe just months, maybe a year. So you start thinking in shorter terms, but it's kind of good because you know that because you don't have time to waste, then you kind of you realize that that time you have is much more precious. So you try to make choices and you try to train yourself almost automatically that you will perceive what is a waste of time or not. You know what I'm saying? If you want to stay in some evening and just enjoy yourself and watch TV, that's what you want to do. If you want to go out to the movies or you want to go for a walk, you know that's what you want to do. You don't have to debate about it. You don't have to think about it. I mean, in the sense of making this heavy, hard choice of what am I going to do? Now, granted, we do face things in our older years that maybe they've been hanging on from when we were in our 20s and 30s. Look, you know, I've done so many jobs and had not really a career, but I've done so many different jobs. So there's a part of me that looks back and says, well, hey, I never really solved what I was going to be. I didn't become a this or a that, but I got through life by doing a whole multitude of things. I guess it's part of my nature. Anyway, as you get older, you do realize that your time is shorter and you tend not to worry about those things. And that may not be your concern. Maybe it's you were trying to find someone to love you or you could love back. Maybe you're trying to find for a grander purpose in life. But then you start realizing that just living itself every day is a really good purpose. Okay, stay tuned for number 2. Number 2 is kind of based on number 1. You realize that not everything really matters. You know that arguments and fights that could lead to feuds that last for forever really aren't that important anymore. So you tend to, although you will stick up for the things that really, really matter, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of things worth fighting for, but you start to be more picky and choosy, and you realize not everything matters the same. I know sometimes I see, I see people, younger people coming and going, and they're all upset, and I was too, and they could be all upset about something as simple as their fan's not working today, or their car broke down, and these are important things. But then they add them on to other things that they've done or that are going on in their life, and all of a sudden you got this whole heap of pain that you're trying to drag with you all through your day. And if you got kids, that's an extra burden. I'm talking like when you're younger, or maybe you're looking after someone, and you start to realize that not everything really, really matters so much. And why doesn't it matter? Because you know life is short, number one. And so you know that number two, that the things that don't matter in this life aren't worth putting a lot of energy into. Because, you know, for example, you look around, you can walk by a graveyard, you can see all these things from people way back in the 1600s or whatever, and they're gone. I mean, they had concerns, and their concerns may have been valid and legitimate. But you know, ultimately, you get a little more choosy for what really matters. That's number two. You really start to realize not everything matters. Now, stay tuned for number three. Number three is that you are aware that getting older can really, really suck. It really does. You start getting more aches and pains, more limitations on both your mental and your physical health to be able to go out and do things like you used to do. Before, you had all the energy, like mental energy, to fight things like anxiety, social anxiety, being with people. And as you get older, you don't have that much that same amount of energy you had to force yourself to get out there and to just mingle with people and to do that sort of thing. And it does suck because you start feeling in your own body and you start getting, like I know myself, I've had a history of just, surgeries. You start looking back and you start thinking, I know, I met a man the other day, or not the other day, but I know a man that he's in his mid-70s, never had a surgery. Well, guy, I guess you're pretty lucky. But for a lot of us, we end up having knee surgeries. We end up having hip surgery. I just saw a friend of mine I hadn't heard from in years, and it's because we knew each other when we were like teenagers. And I just saw, like, on his Facebook post or whatever, that he had hip surgery. I'm like, hip surgery? That's like, my God, man, you're younger than I am. But then you start realizing that you've got problems with sciatica, you've got knee problems, as I said, and then maybe your foot starts to hurt and you can't walk on your heel. All these different things, digestive issues, neck pain, back pain. Back pain is, you get back pain when you're young. Yeah, there's some young people that do have serious chronic problems with back pain, and I get that. It's a real thing, and I sympathize. But generally speaking, as you get older, you know that it does and can kind of suck because you become more consciously aware of all these things. I remember when I used to work in retail, actually, we used to hire people like in their, 16-year-olds and that, who were just starting their first job. And I still remember I was assistant manager at the time, and I remember this girl coming in from after school or something, and I don't know, maybe she played football or something. But basically, we had a pretty relaxed environment where we were. She didn't have to walk too much. But all she did the whole evening, I still remember, is that, having to work with this person. No, I shouldn't say having. She was a pleasure to work with. But I mean, she would just complain about how sore her feet were and sore her feet were. And I'm thinking, yeah, maybe she's got some legitimate thing there. I'm not trying to say that's not true. But if you hear a lot of young people talking like that, and you get to know it's not some chronic disease they're dealing with, but it's just that they're tired. It's like, if you think you're tired from standing now, wait till you hit even your late 30s, early 40s, and then you start getting 60s and 70s. And yep, I believe in exercise. I exercise myself, try to keep the muscles toned, and go for walks, that kind of thing. And they all help, I know. But generally speaking, most of us, we find that getting older really does suck in that way. But we do learn the importance, and this is kind of part of this point, is that we do realize that grace is everything. And what I mean, I don't mean the kind you say at your dinner table if you do that sort of thing, but you start to temper, or you try at least. Yes, we all have those moments where we just don't make it, but and come in bursts of anger or something. But we do try to temper our lives with grace. That means we try to say, oh, this is not so bad. It could be worse. I had an uncle that lived in his 90s, and when he started losing his hearing, I'm not sure I really go along with this, But hey, he was older than me, and he was in his late 80s, early 90s, and he started really losing his hearing. And I remember he said to the doctor, well, at least I can still see. I'm like, okay, that's what he thought. But we do tend to temper our lives more with grace, because we know that a lot of what we go through can actually suck. All right, stay tuned for the next one. The fourth thing you know as you get older is that you're having less influence over your surroundings. Before, people would come to you for advice. Maybe you were on the job and you helped by fixing things or selling things, whatever you did, and you felt you were just a part of it all, and you had all this awesome influence over life. And when you got home at night and kicked up your feet, you thought, wow, gee, I've affected a lot of people. And if you had children, that keeps you busy too. And you knew that that your children, they counted on you. You had to provide for them. You could teach them good ways. You could, raise them up and to be good people. And so you had this sense of influence. And you also helped, maybe you had parents that you were helping when they were older. And you could really be an influence in life. But what you find, and what older people do know, is that you seem to lose less influence. And I see a lot of older people, they do tend to get kind of grumpy and grouchy about it. And they start thinking, why is no one listening to me? And why aren't people doing things my way? And granted, it's true, you might know how to build that shed better, put up that drywall, but maybe you were there too when you were young and you just wouldn't listen. And I guess you got to kind of let it go sometimes. That's the way it is. You got to ease into it sometimes. You got to pick your battles, and you just go for the ones that you know you can win. Because overall, as you get older, you seem to have less influence around you. Okay, stay tuned for number 5. The fifth thing you get to know as you get older is that a lot of times you're going to have to be the bigger man just to keep the peace. And maybe that's a little gender bias, that term, bigger man, but I know we all familiar with it, especially people in our age group. It just means that sometimes you just got to let that battle go, and you just got to swallow your pride, and you just got to let it go, and you got to know that what's more important in this situation is not that everyone knows that you're right and your opinion is right, and perhaps it really is, and perhaps you really do know better, but that the fight may not be worth it. That keeping the peace, by keeping your mouth shut, by going along with things, if you can, and not always, but you do learn keeping the peace is a big part of getting older, and you know how much more worth peace is over a wasted battle on something. Number 6. We know that a lot of problems can be solved by simply going for a walk or piling firewood. Now that may be partly a metaphor because you may not burn firewood, but to do something methodical and simply physical and what some people would call menial labor, like going for a walk or piling firewood, will actually solve a lot of your problems. It'll give you time to think about your decision and what you're going to do next and how you're going to handle it, how you're going to react to something. And maybe you're not able to walk, maybe you're not able to pile firewood, but you are going to take a break, take a breather, take some breaths, do something else. It's kind of like I do painting, or I used to do more painting than I do now actually. And I mean like painting pictures. I know I did paint houses years ago as well. But one of the things is that after a while when you're painting something or drawing something, you kind of have to back away from it, sometimes flip it upside down, go for a coffee, go for a walk, and come back and take a look at the problem. So a lot of problems can be solved just by going for a walk, taking a breath, taking a break, and sometimes problems, if you wait them out, will sometimes kind of fix themselves. Okay, the next one is good advice for everyone, and it's number 7. Number 7, if you'd agreed to do something, always give it your best and a little bit more. It's your word that really matters. And when you agree to doing it, it's kind of even if it's in speech or spoken and not written down, it's a kind of a contract that's up to you to keep. So older people know the best thing to do is to keep your word and do what you said you've done if you've agreed to do it. And how does that benefit us? We live in a world where people want to look for quick fixes. They want to lie. They want to get out of contracts. They want to deny what they said before. This is the world we live in. But the world works better if we take some age-old wisdom and apply it, and that is, do what you had agreed to do and go a little bit further. Do a better job. Now you may say, this is going to set me up for some abuse. Possibly. But then again, life is all about balance, isn't it? And what you know as an older person is that you know that that balance is the thing. The balance is to know in your heart and your gut that you've experienced that in this instance, if I do my best and I do it without expecting something more, and I give them more, I'm going to have a clearer conscience, even if I walk away. Now, here's the thing. This has been applied in my life a couple of times. I had a cleaning contract one time, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I worked extremely hard at it. Now, I was in my mid-late 20s, I think, to early 30s, and it was a lot of heavy labor and a lot of hard work. And I signed a contract to do that work, to clean those buildings, or that building, it was an agreement. And I did my best. I believed in doing my best and going beyond my best. Now, it got to the point where it did, for such low wage, they kept heaping on more and more responsibilities, even outside of what would be the contract or description. And I kept taking on more and more to the point where I had to walk away. But I didn't stop doing a good job. I didn't just keep doing it for the people that was employing me, because what I was doing is I was cleaning for children, I was cleaning for teaching staff, and I was maintaining public health. So I took that role seriously. And I did more than I was asked for. I had to leave the contract, I had to go, and I did it in the right way. And maybe perhaps you have to quit a job. Give your 2 weeks notice in. You know, our society's fallen apart because no one thinks they owe anything to anybody. And everybody's concerned, well, if I'm not a billionaire, why should I work hard? Again, I'm not saying you should let yourself be abused. But I think we're living in a world now where basically crying about it, maybe sometimes crying more about the abuse that we're getting than the fact that we're maybe not keeping our word. Why is it so important? Well, I don't think you should spend your whole life wasted being abused. Don't get me wrong. You know, go back to school if you have to, work hard, do the things you got to do to get a better income, whatever. Leave that job, but do it gracefully. Do it in such a way that you know, and here's the important thing. This is the advice I think we can give to ourselves, that you know as an older person, that you're gonna at night, and maybe going to bed at night, maybe going to rest, is somewhat like a metaphor, or would it be a simile, I don't know, of the fact that when we die, we're kind of resting. And so when you lay your head on that pillow, or you're laying it down for the last time, you could say with a clear conscience, it's not going to matter so much how great a person, how much money you made. And people hate billionaires anyway. I don't see how they're happy being billionaires. Sure, make lots of money, make good money. But if you're not the type of person that's going to share and help other people and have a clear conscience and worked hard for that, if you're screwing over people, then I don't mean you, the listener. I'm just saying in general, there are people out there like that. So I would say number 7, and the final one for this video, is to keep a clear conscience. know that you did a really good job at what you did. Whatever you were asked to do, whether it was to fix a car, whether it was to write up a report, whatever it was, do it. I told my children this. Do it, and they're all doing quite well, actually. They're doing far better than I did. They all are in sort of careers. Yeah, I guess so, you'd call it that. Whereas I never got a career myself, as I had mentioned earlier. But I told them all, if you're asked to do something, especially when you're young, do an extra good job at it. Not forever. Don't stick at it forever and be abused. But make sure when you walk away, when the day is done, you've got a clear conscience. Thanks for watching, you guys. My name is Kevin. This is Silver Hill. And thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. We'll see you in the next video, okay? You guys take care of yourselves. Bye. Older people know that there could be ticks in this grass. And I wish I had put my anti-tick stuff on today.